Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. I'm Christine, life balance coach and world champion ballroom dancer, and I believe that everyone has the power to create their very own life by design. The Recovering Perfectionist Podcast was created with a mission to encourage a life of abundance by finding peace and acceptance in our own imperfections and developing healthy self-love through sustainable habits and manifestation. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
Welcome back to another episode of the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I am here today. Guys, this is going to be a very, very special episode. I'm going to be revealing I'm going to be very vulnerable in this episode. I'm here today with Laura Marie. She is a birth and motherhood mindset mentor. She's a certified clinical hypnotist and a certified doula. Hello, Laura.
Hello. Oh, Christine, I'm so excited. We're gonna
do all the things. This podcast is all about me, shedding my armor of all of these years of, putting like faking it till you make it, putting on a show, all those things, and really showcasing that like we all have fears, we all have insecurities, we all have, mental health unbalances. And this is what I've been showing through this podcast. But this pregnancy, childbirth, all these things this is the cherry on the top of the cake for me. This is the biggest fear. And my husband and I want kids. I grew up not wanting kids at all. Met my husband, went through that journey, took a year and a half mentally for me to be like, okay, I want children in my life.
Yeah.
But I'm still like, how's that process going to happen? Who's going to have these children? Right?
Who's going to do this now?
Who's going to do this now? So I've been working with a bunch of different coaches and therapists to work through the trauma of where that's stemming from so that we can kind of remove that. One of them is Leah Fuentes, who is how we got connected.
Leah. She's
so
just
shout out to Leah. She's amazing. And I've been doing hypnotherapy sessions with her, redefining motherhood, putting myself in the position of pain and childbirth and our brains make things so much more dramatic than they really are. And so what does that actually look like? When I tell you, Laura, certain things that have happened since I've started these sessions in my life, not even on a session, but just different things that have happened, of painful moments, of all these different things that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real time. I have to deal with this right now. And just seeing how strong I am, mentally, physically, all of the things.
Yeah.
So I want you to introduce yourself. I want you to kind of talk a little bit about how you got into this and what's the journey that led to you, obviously, in a nice compact way, because I know you have kids yourself, and this is, and why you kind of wanted to help women through this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm certified clinical hypnotist, certifying as a labor postpartum doula. I have just this deep passion to help women really empower themselves through the journey of motherhood, on the way there, through it, after it, that it really can be just this beautiful, expansive experience that just gets to add to this growth throughout your life. I became certified as a clinical hypnotist probably about 2017. I was just really pulled to this idea about healing through the subconscious, and that so much of who we are, who we believe ourselves to be, this worldview is rooted in this subconscious. So I have been coaching people through kind of breaking through their own subconscious barriers and hurdles. And it's, when it comes to the birth work, there was something in me that I knew at some point I was going to be, involved in birth work. I knew this even in my early 20s, when I first kind of got involved, or not involved, but learned a lot more about the world of midwifery, and had a really strong pull there. But yeah, when it came to the birth of my son, he was born actually just December 2021. So he's just about 10 months old at this time. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. About a year prior to that, or just around the time, just before I found out I was pregnant, I had a really big spiritual awakening. I don't know if it was just like turning 30, like having my Saturn return. There were so many things that just kind of shook me awake into really stepping into this business, this life of coaching and mentorship and mindset, and really owning my own authentic self and healing my own childhood traumas, and realizing that you don't have to have the big T trauma to see the impacts of your childhood and how they affect your adult life. Right? Like there's so many varying degrees. So through that healing and that awakening, I don't know, I was in such a great place, as far as like my mindset and my spirituality, all those things, that when my husband and I found out we were pregnant, like we had just sort of opened up the opportunity or the possibility of it happening. And it happened actually really quick. And I don't know, I remember just through my pregnancy that I really wanted to manage my energy. And that's when I really started setting some harder boundaries in the work, while I was still in the work world and developing my business, and just doing things that like protected my energy. Anyways, so I had a really exceptional pregnancy. And I think it was just even through my training and my background with hypnosis, is knowing that like your mindset is so key in something like this, and that there is like such a paradigm of fear based around birth and pregnancy, that I was just like determined, like it does not have to be that way, and already in my mind it was like, I'm gonna have an amazing birth experience, and my pregnancy itself, like I maintain like focus on managing my energy, managing my stress level, setting boundaries, that like I'm creating a life, like things that I used to prioritize, like trying to work hard and be the best of this, is like no longer playing that big of an importance, because like at the end of the day, I'm in control of managing my own energy, and there's certain things that I just needed to cut out. And for the best, the better of myself and my growing baby. And, this pregnancy was like, I had no morning sickness. I felt like completely in thrive mode. Like I had so much energy. I had, all the things that most women say they experience or are expected to, right? Believe that this is what you're expected to
right, because society conditioning and programming has already put that in our heads. So we're like, oh, well, this is normal. You know what I mean? It's like all the symptoms, all the things that we're expecting. So I have two questions for you. Were you ever scared to be pregnant or go through childbirth? Was this ever a fear of yours, or that was not really a thing?
It was never a fear for me. I don't know. I had this belief that it was just going to be it could be a really empowering experience. I mean, there are fears that come up because it's in a sense of like, well, not everything's in my control.
That part. And that's the part that terrifies me. Right. Because when I am doing something, at least I know I have the tools and resources that if shit hits the fan, I can figure my way out. But with this, it's like I'm completely at the mercy of my body, but other people, other doctors, things like that if something goes wrong, there's not a lot I can do in that moment. I have to just trust the process. And that is, it's something I'm learning how to do in other areas of my life at the moment, but it's, much different when you're in the middle of a major experience like that.
Yeah. And I mean, in a sense, like there's a lot out of your control, but there also is a lot still within your control, right?
Mentally.
Mentally,
Yeah.
like how
Yeah.
you perceive what's happening, you know, even your self-talk throughout the day,
Yes.
and loving your body throughout the whole process, you know, because it is changing. There's all sorts of new sensations along the way. Um, I would definitely say like just educating yourself too on the process of birth, on the process of your body growing. Really, like, information is power, right? Once we know, you know, what is happening, it really helps take away some of the fears. You know, and finding, one of the biggest things too is also finding a care team, whether it's a midwife, a doctor, whatever, that aligns with the kind of birth you want to have and the kind of pregnancy you want to follow. I found that, like, you know, I listened to a lot of positive birth stories.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was just all this inner work that I had done, that I was also just very grounded in like my sense of self, my sense of security, safety. I think that too plays a really big role in this as well, is like, you know, what are the terms? What is the structure of your own safety, security? That, you know, because and your relationship to fear as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then my other question is, did your mom have good pregnancies and deliveries?
Yeah, my mom actually, she did have good pregnancies. My own birth was relatively good. I think all of them were. Maybe her first one, she was really young with my my half brother, I think in her early 20s. And it was a difficult pregnancy because she was young. It was unexpected. She didn't know how she was going to care for this baby. You know, she thought,
so there was a lot of mental stress there, because I'm thinking the younger that we are, isn't that what they say, that you don't want to, you know, they use this term that I completely am against, geriatric pregnancy, once you're 35. So the idea, it's terrible. If a doctor says that to me, I'm walking out of his office.
Yeah.
No, so the idea is that, you know, the younger the better, you know what I mean? You're more resilient, it's easier.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like the medical world is going to have all sorts of ideal scenarios of when is the best time to give birth, when's the best time to be pregnant. But honestly, I'm seeing more and more women starting families later in life, later in their 30s. Like my mom, when I was born, she was 39.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, like she had both my brother and I later in her 30s. You know, my dad was late in his age too. And even now, and seeing it, it's more and more common. And I think like it's all about your energy, your mindset, your preparation behind it. That really plays a big part, I think, in having that easeful experience and feeling more flow rather than fear throughout a pregnancy, leading into birth. Yeah, a mother's mental and emotional state plays a huge role, even in utero, on the effects of the fetus, of the baby. It's such a big thing. I don't think is talked about enough, and that there's even studies that have shown this as well, the effects on the mother, on the fetus, and, you know, seeing certain effects on how the children later on can cope with stress and cope with adversity in life. So I mean, all these things are, again, like they're all within your control, and that the thing is, you can still feel fear and you can still have a great experience, right? It's all about that relationship with fear and how you integrate it into your experience.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. So there have been a lot of talks in my circle about like how this is going to go down. You know, my mother had great pregnancies, didn't do epidurals, just went for it. She had me in France. So that was a very different experience. She said it was fabulous. You know, she's in the hospital for like almost a week and a half. They're taking good care of her. It's like, it's a free experience. It's great. Coming here in the United States, a lot more rushed, right? She had my brother here in the United States 4 years later, a lot more rushed. You're in and out in a couple of days. It's very expensive. It's not as, how do I put it? Like a homey experience. You know what I mean?
It's more like a business transaction.
Correct. And that, like you said, mental with all these machines beeping and everything, that'll drive anyone crazy. And then my mother-in-law is from Haiti. She's had 4 children. 3 of them she had in Haiti and 1 of them in the United States. And, just the way that she grew up and just different things like that, for her, it's like no big deal. Like, I've done harder things in my life. So I get that. That's not very helpful for me because my experience is I have been blessed and not had to have any major surgeries or broken anything, or I avoid doctors like the plague. Like, I take good care of myself. I'm homeopathic. I boost my immune system. Like, I'm not going to a hospital unless I'm like literally dying, And so to think about having that experience, and like I've seen, so many, this is like the popular thing now is to have home births, water home births, right? So you're seeing people like Hilary Duff and some of these celebrities that are doing this now, that are saying this is the most wonderful experience, Ashley Graham, a bunch of these people that have really gravitated towards this experience, and had, like yourself, a certified doula, the people that they love around them, not all these beeping machines, and creating this wonderful experience for a baby to come into. There's a lot of things that we don't know about that the doctors do when you're in the hospital giving birth. Just little things, but a lot of these people on Instagram that are certified in all of these ways, they're talking about the fact that, we give an epidural to a mom so that she's not in pain, but then the birthing process slows down. They got to give her Pitocin. Pitocin speeds up the heart rate of the baby because now it's epidural, Pitocin, all the things. And that leads to many emergency C-sections, which for me, my thought process was, oh, well, it's totally fine. I'm just going to literally just schedule a C-section. There'll be no labor. There'll be no pain. I'll just go in. They'll cut me open. They'll get the baby out. Easy peasy, right? I won't feel a thing. Because I have some of these friends of mine who are athletes like I am. And they're like, oh my gosh, like I've been stretching. I've been doing all the things. Everything's great. And then 30 hours of labor later, or 25 hours of labor later, and then they end up in emergency C-section and they're pissed because they're like, oh my gosh, I was going to do it natural and I didn't want to like cut open my abs and all these things. And I'm like, you sat there for 20, 25 hours just in labor and they didn't, like, you don't get a gold star at the end. Like, nobody needs to be a hero. You know what I mean? You just both need to be safe, you and baby. So like, if I schedule it and just go right in and be done, that's been my thought process, right? So I know there's a lot of different things that I touched on there, but like, talk to me a little bit about the home births. You had your son in a hospital?
No, we did a home birth. First birth at home. Yeah.
And was that the plan from day one, or was that something you leaned into later on?
That was, so, I mean, how I went into this, like planning the birth or, preparing for it was, I'm not going to be dead set on anything because again, I know not everything's in my control, but this is my ideal. And given the time, and again, like your terms of safety and security are different for everyone. And I knew at the time, I was like, hell no, I do not want to, hospital completely out of the question. But at the end of the day, like there was a part of me that had to surrender to, if something should come up that I absolutely need to go to the hospital, I need to be okay with that on some level, And that took a little bit of work. Like I remember the hospital calling me prior to doing the registration. I was like, and they're kind of going through the steps like I'm going to be there. I'm like, okay, I understand I need this phone call, but like, this is not, and I do sort of like this protection over me as I'm on this phone call. Okay, we're just protecting our energy. It's okay.
Well, that's it. Cause I'm immediately like, I've had some some traumatic experiences with OBs and, OBGYNs and different people like that in the Western medical field. And I'm immediately like closed off to a lot of the things that they say, which is part of me doesn't want to be, but part of me is like protecting my energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, if something like that happens and I need to go in, or if I decide to do it in a hospital just because I'm nervous about the home birth situation, like I need to be in a state of like, I trust you, you're the person that's going to do this. And it's slowly but surely, like my husband just got his wisdom teeth out yesterday.
Yeah.
And was a very easy procedure. He's, doing great. But the doctor was really fun, came in, super chill, cracked some jokes. We talked about what we do for a living. He told us the procedure, it's a routine thing for him. And within a matter of 20 minutes, my husband was ready to go home.
Yeah.
So when you have people like that, I did end up finding an OB who does the same thing. He's like, he gets me in, we do the routine thing. He gives me a pap, gives me results right there. I don't have to go home and wait for a week and a half for results. He's someone that he's like, yeah, I'm kind of like a little black sheep of the medical field, because I do things a little differently. And I was like, well, that's why I like you, that's okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You make me feel comfortable. You make me feel like I can ask you questions and nothing's a stupid question. And like, I have a say in how this appointment goes.
Yeah.
And we get to do it together. And it's not just something happening to me that I have to shield myself from. I feel like that's what a lot of these doctors are doing, because it's like, listen, we got to go. I got other patients to see. I don't have time for this. And the people who take the time to get to know you, and, I come in and he's like, how you doing today? I'm like, well, this isn't my favorite place to be, but I'm here. And, we make jokes.
Yeah.
That's something I'm trying to work towards, of getting more comfortable with certain doctors that can break the ice with me on that.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it. And that's like one of the first steps you can take, again, that is like within your controls, that you actually do get to choose who your care providers are. And if you don't jive with them, like, you have that power, you have that choice to say, okay, we're not going this route. Right. Just like, and choosing your location for giving birth is like plays a huge role, right? Again, it's like knowing where you feel most safe and secure. And again, like that's where, having a home birth, I was like, okay, that's kind of a no-brainer for me. To me, I felt so empowered in what my body was able to do and what it can do, and really trusting in that, that I was like, you know what? Home feels safest to me and the most comfortable. But at the same time, as I also knew that, like, if we wanted to go to the birth center, we could do that at any point. And then the other part of me is like, I don't want to ride in a car during contractions, so it was, it was kind of what I set out at the beginning. And it took a little bit for my husband to kind of get on board. I mean, he was like, for the most part, he would be like, are you sure you want to do a home birth? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. But I'm like, as long as you're comfortable, but if you're not, you need to say something now. But
speak now or forever hold your peace. Right.
Pretty much.
Explain to me, you said the center. So, I mean, I've also done some research about birthing centers versus hospitals. Talk to me a little bit about a birthing center and how that's a little bit more like the middle ground between the two.
Yeah. So the birthing center, essentially, like how it works here in Canada, and I think it's similar in the States too, is where you can have a midwife, and a midwife will oversee your pregnancy and your birth at a birth center. And essentially, like the ones we have here, they're really nice. It's almost like a hotel room. Like you get a really nice big jet tub, and there's like a bed, a couch, a fireplace, and they've got all the things you need. You can, nice lighting, you can bring all the things that you want, the speakers and twinkly lights, and you can really set the stage. And typically, you're still within a traveling distance to a hospital should you need to transfer. And essentially you get to do your thing there. You would, same thing, you would check in after, you're likely 4 centimeters dilated or more. Midwives would oversee.
So why did you choose a home birth over the birthing center?
At the end of it, I felt most comfortable in my own home. I just had this vision of like, okay, I'm gonna, go into labor. I'm gonna hang out in the bathtub, maybe have a glass of wine while things are
I love it.
things are opening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we had a decent tub set up. So when our midwives came over for the visit, just to like check everything out and make sure, the setup of the house, would work fine. And what whatever scenario was going to pan out. And I was like, yeah, you know what, it felt right. And it was listening to that intuitive feeling of like, this feels right. It feels right to do here. I'm going to trust it,
Right.
just like all throughout, it was like trusting the process of my pregnancy, of the birth. There's even moments. So this is another part throughout pregnancy where I find certain apps and stuff that are trying to inform you along the way, like, talking about kick counts, things like this, it's like, there's almost just, I don't know, too much attention sometimes drawn to like, are you comparing certain things along your pregnancy to others? And I remember reading something in one of these apps about talking about kick counts. And I was like, and it made me sort of aware in the back of my mind of like counting one day. And I was like, oh, it doesn't like feel like it's quite enough, or, and like, those were moments of when I felt fear. And I was like, do I call the midwife? And checking in, I was like, okay, well, what's actually happening? Like, is there actually any indication that something isn't right? Or is this like an external source that's like making me second guess my own intuition? Right. And, ultimately, like, I would have my next appointment come up and obviously everything is right. Like, I would have little affirmations every day and touch base with my baby and knew that he was healthy and knew that he was thriving. And like, that's what I knew was going on in my body. And these other fears and stuff that would come up, that they were, something projected from maybe something I read that literally had no evidence in my life that this was happening. Right. And
We're just trying to compare to what society says is a normal pregnancy based on all the data. But I don't think there's any normal pregnancy. I've read so many examples and so many studies of things, from good examples to bad examples to trauma to great to all the things. And I just don't see any norm. Like, this is what a great normal pregnancy looks like. Like, I just don't see any of that. So like, you're right. We know our bodies better than anybody, and we need to trust that. And obviously ask questions along the way. Were you going to a regular Western doctor for your appointments?
No, I was seeing a midwife throughout.
Okay.
I didn't even tell my doctor I was pregnant until when I saw him a week ago.
That's amazing.
I didn't see, and like, nothing against him either, but I just also had a different view of what we were doing with our child that probably wasn't the normal standards within the medical practice of what you do with your babies. And so I was like, well, I'll touch base with him when I feel like there's reason to, or
Right.
That makes sense. But otherwise, no, I saw my midwife throughout. I saw a naturopath as well, that just helped me regulate some of my vitamin, nutrition, and other things to prepare. I saw a chiropractor. Like, I found an amazing chiropractor across my street that specialized with prenatal.
That's amazing.
Yeah, adjustments regularly. And learning now through my doula certification too, is just like how important that alignment in your pelvis is in preparing yourself for birth. And that's what I mean. There's so many things in your control that you can do to encourage a more easeful birth, no matter where you're at.
Well, so many
right?
things
like,
that we're not talking about, though, like in the greater society conversation, like these things you're talking about, of like a good chiropractor, a naturopath for nutrition, a midwife to help you with your energy and, how things are going to go, lay things out, versus everyone's talking about keeping, this is how much weight you should be gaining every week, or this is what your baby should look like at this stage, or this is when you should start to feel kicks, or this is all of the things, we're monitoring things that really are not, I think, as crucial.
Yeah.
and that are not going to make the difference. Some people are like, oh yeah, I'm stretching. Oh yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And that's if you have an active mom who's exercising. A lot of moms are not even exercising. But yeah, you're right. Alignment of your pelvis to be able to prepare for that, energetically, physically, all of those things. Like those are things that Western doctors are not discussing.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. It just kind of gets completely left to the side. And it's such an important thing. Like, again, like what I experienced, it was like total harmony throughout this pregnancy and into birth. Like it just flowed so well that I remember, a few weeks away from when he was going to hit 40 weeks and just being excited, like so excited for labor, for childbirth.
Wow.
It's just like, I can't wait to see what my body's going to do, and just to really trust its natural process, and that we have this, hormonal blueprint that actually allows us to feel pleasure in birth, to almost in a sense of state of ecstasy, and that our body is wise, our babies are wise, like they know what to do, that without any interference, that it can actually happen just all on its own, that you don't need a doctor there, you don't need an episiotomy, you don't need an epidural, you don't need all these interventions, you don't need the Pitocin, like you don't need a room full of medical professionals watching you push out your baby to make sure that you're doing it right. Like you don't need these things. Like if you really open up to trusting your body and trusting the process and really anchoring into that, that's something extraordinary can happen. Yeah. Not even extraordinary. It's just like, this is an ordinary thing. Like our existence here is proof that women have been giving birth unassisted for many, many generations, right? It's only been medicalized really in the last 100 years or so. And this is primarily a Western thing.
Right.
Birth culture all over the world is so different and has such a different perspective than what it's become in the Western world, and the lens that they've shone on it, and fear mongering and fear based. And
yeah,
I mean, some of the conversations that I've had with women lately, some like family and friends of mine and neighbors, of like what medical staff and nurses even say to them, when they're trying to admit and check in, they're like, oh, you're not screaming, so you're not in enough pain, so I don't think you're actually that far in labor, when they're like 6 to 8 centimeters dilated almost, like they have a different perception of birth and the process, and they're not screaming in pain, so they're almost just not taken seriously, because it's like, no, birth is actually just supposed to be painful. And I think one friend, they were putting the IV in her, and she's like kind of just like winced a little, and the nurse said something like, oh, you're gonna have to be tougher than that, because everything about childbirth is way more painful. And it's like, what?
Right.
What are these people saying?
Right. Like already just to say that, like, that's not what I want to hear right before I'm about to do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, your experience of childbirth, doing it in a home birth, water birth session, what do you feel like? Was this the most painful thing you've ever done? Or was it, like you said, childbirth shouldn't be painful? So where were you on the pain scale?
Oh, I was like all the way in Pleasure Town. There was no, like, I was on the brink of an orgasm throughout. Like it was, I was just so determined to feel, I don't know, like I said, in this place of ecstasy, like allowing those waves of intensity to flow through my body, to not fight it, to lean into it, to allow, to surrender to it. And when you do, like I said, there's the way our bodies work in birth, and the hormones that we have available to us, we have oxytocin. Our body is pulsing it through our bodies with every contraction, that we get this opportunity to lean into that. We have the beta carotenoids that also release, that allow us to feel pleasure, and when you surrender to that, and like the feeling in my body was amazing. Like I was not screaming. I was so tapped in, and also knowing like my experience with working in a trance state, that I tapped into my breath. I allowed my breath to follow and flow what was happening in my body and match that, rather than trying to fight what was happening in there. And even, sometimes as a medical staff, they'll tell you, okay, well, you're getting close. If you're 9 to 10 centimeters, like, oh, don't push. And I think a lot of women get stuck there because then they're consciously trying to fight the waves in their body. And it's not that you're pushing, it's not consciously pushing, right? It's different. It's like, still allow those waves to happen. Your body is pushing, but as long as you're not consciously trying to push with it, and rather just release and surrender and flow with those waves, that it continues to open. Like I went from 4 to 10 centimeters in under 2 hours.
So that was going to be my next question, is how long it's from start of contractions to baby out?
So I would say, like, from my active labor, like there was something, my girlfriend that was here visiting, and she was kind of here for support. Like I built my little village, and we went for a walk at about 9:30 in the morning, and I could just feel cramping. And I was like, okay, maybe today is the day. Maybe it's today. I'm not going to get hung up on anything. We still went out. We did grocery shopping and stuff. And we came home about 1:30, 2 o'clock. Because I was like, okay, like it's just getting a little bit more intense. I don't want to be out walking around. I'd rather be at home. I went in the bath. She made me some snacks. I had a glass of wine. I just like hung out in the bathtub. I called my midwife the first time at about 3:30 in the afternoon. And they were like, the waves were kind of crashing like one after the other, maybe about 2.5 minutes apart. She showed up eventually at about 6:30, I think it was. And then he was born at 9:30. So
wow. So like 3 hours.
Like 3, yeah, it flowed so well. And he was not a small baby. Like he was 9 pounds, 4 ounces.
Whoa.
And and also, like, we had such great care with our midwives. Like she kind of just saw what I was doing. She's like, okay, you seem to have this under control. Like she really just sort of let me do my thing and wasn't in a rush to check me, and she was really good. She's like, okay, it can be encouraging or discouraging. And I was, again, detached from wherever I was at. I was like, I'm here for this. I'm here for the experience. I'm enjoying what's happening in my body. It is what it is, but I feel like it's likely pretty good because I was just in full flow, right?
Wow.
Full flow, not in resistance to anything. And throughout, like, the contractions, they were happening again 2.5 minutes apart. So it's not like there was a big rest in between, but I just tapped into my breath, tapped into what was happening in my body, and just, again, like, full surrender to the process. Yeah. And he actually we didn't end up doing a water birth. Like it didn't just work out in the hot or in the tub. I ended up having it like a little bit too hot, the water, I think. And it just wasn't comfortable for me. And, I was like, I'd love a water birth, but then it just didn't happen that way. And it wasn't meant to. But he actually ended up being born on our bed with my husband there. My husband received him as he came out. We actually didn't even know what we were having. And yeah, it was like such a beautiful, empowering experience. Like I was like, this is what more women need to feel, and that it can be, this amazing. It can be this pleasurable. Like, I think I have a small little video too of the last 2.5 minutes of the birth. And I remember the midwife even saying, she's like, okay, you could be, it's likely a lot of burning sensation right now. And it was as he was about to crown. And I remember thinking in my head, I was like, oh, this isn't even that bad. And I think I even say out loud in the video, I was like, oh no, I'm fine.
Wow.
And there were so many points where they're like, okay, this might be painful or it's going to get more intense. And I was like, almost bracing myself. But then I was like, okay, that wasn't that bad at all. Like that actually felt good. And when you get to push, it's just like, oh my God. Like, that's again, you surrender to it. It feels like, it can feel amazing, like fucking blow your mind.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's where I was on the pain scale.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. what did your husband say? Because you said he was kind of a little bit not on board at the beginning, and then he was, and then like he's now catching him. Like what was his experience?
He was so happy we did the home birth. He was like, complete turnaround, and he was amazing. He was so supportive throughout, and yeah, he was just like, he's like, that was an amazing experience. I'm so glad we did it at home. And the amazing thing too was, typically if you go to a birth center, usually they only allow you to stay maybe up to 4 hours. It'll totally depend on the center. Hospitals, I think they end up keeping you at least overnight, but here we were a family right here at home in bed. We got to just immediately rest and just start that integration, have those golden hours together, not have to worry about packing things up and going, because it was in the middle of winter, like December 1st. And so we didn't have to go out into the cold. We didn't have to get in a car. Like we were here, we were home. Our midwives, they stayed with us for a few hours. Like I still had to get up and walk and go to the bathroom and do all the things. They check a few things before they, leave us for the night.
Okay.
And then, they return the next day to come check in on me and for a couple days after. And, I still go and see them up to 6 weeks later. But yeah, he was.
So you never went to the hospital at all, like to even check in? Like, how does the process go with birth certificate, weigh-ins, all that stuff? The midwife does all of that?
Yeah, the midwife does all that. So essentially, like here in Canada, as long as you have a low risk pregnancy, you can have a midwife. You don't need to have a doctor. And the midwife, they have certain hospitals where they have rights in that they can, if you want to have a hospital birth, they can go there, or else they have the birth center, or else they have home. And actually, they really do enjoy and support home births. But here in Ottawa, I found, and even when I talked to my midwives afterwards, I was like, talking about kind of the business that I'm building and talking about the mindset stuff and, like, what did you guys see? And, what was your perspective of this birth? And he said, honestly, it was such a treat. He said, we don't see this very often. They're like, you had a large baby at home, unmedicated, in a very short amount of time. Right. With like very minimal. I did have a 2-degree tear, but
I was going to ask, did you tear?
I did have a tear, yeah. And at no point did I realize I was having such a big baby either. It didn't even enter my mind, or like how long everything was going to go. But yeah, like all these things, and in a very conservative city where everyone is very, like, I would say a good chunk of the population is very reliant on the experts, on following protocol and certain things like that. Yeah. Seeing a birth like this is a little bit outside the box for them.
Wow. So what did you have to go in and fix the tear?
No, our midwife, she stitched me up right here in bed. I just had to shuffle over, they get the light. I was nursing my son while it happened, and they froze me and she stitched me up. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Okay, so yes, you're, like you said, it's kind of an odd thing because people are so conditioned and programmed to think that it's supposed to go this way. We trust the doctors for a reason. They've delivered hundreds and thousands of babies. Mm-hmm. What made you want to do it this way so much? Did your mom, your other generations, did they look at you and be like, oh my gosh, girl, you have no idea, it's your first kid, like you should really do it in the hospital?
I don't know, I guess I like to push the limits sometimes, or I like to break stigmas. Yep, sometimes.
Same. I'm a challenge society kind of girl, so I'm all about it.
I'm very much, I like to challenge society or the status quo. It's funny, I remember, I think it was my niece's first birthday, and I'm not even pregnant, I haven't had a kid yet. And I'm there with, my mother-in-law who's had 3 boys, and my sister-in-law who's had, her 1-year-old now. And I don't know, the conversation of pregnancy and childbirth came up, and I was talking about, I'm like, birth doesn't have to be painful. And they're just kind of like, okay, like I went through it, like it's painful, or I had 3 kids, like what are you talking about? And I was just, I don't know, just so like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be. I'm like, pain is literally like a perception, right?
Right.
It's not.
Our brain doesn't decipher pain and pleasure very well. We dictate what is painful and what is pleasurable.
Yeah. And even if we look at, mammals, the animal kingdom, we're the only species here that have perpetuated this idea of fear and ego around birth.
Yeah.
You don't see animals giving, scheduling C-sections and asking for epidurals and needing all these things. And even, if you ever witness a natural birth from an animal, it's easeful, it's like instinctual, it's, there's no screaming in pain, there's none of that. It's like what our bodies are meant to do. There's so much intuitiveness and instincts that just kick in, but we've overrode that so much.
Right.
Yeah.
So for someone like me who is preparing for pregnancy and birth in the future, what is the best, because I agree with everything you're saying, the fear mongering, the programming and conditioning of this is how it should be, and comparing your pregnancies to other women's pregnancies and all these things. What is the best, I think, not one thing, but what are some things that maybe someone like me or women who are looking to have an experience like what you had, how should we prepare?
So one, get really clear on the experience that you want to have.
Okay.
Get really clear on that. Again,
script it, journal it, meditate about it,
visualize it, meditate on it, find those positive birth stories, find those things that prove and build that evidence that it can be this easeful, it can be this pleasurable, it can be this amazing, it can be mind-blowing, right? Really get clear with your relationship to fear and practice doing brave things, right? Practice taking brave action, even in little menial things that, you might hesitate towards, because fear does play such a big part and throughout this process. And like I said, it's not about overcoming it. It's about how to integrate it in and understanding your relationship with fear, because if you are overcome with fear, you will make decisions that lead you away from your ideal birth experience, right? The other thing too is, building a really strong support system, whether it be your partner, your medical care team, getting a doula, right? Get people that align with your vision.
Yeah.
And that will help advocate for you throughout the process as well. Because when you're giving birth, you are in a totally different world, right? In a totally different mindset. And if you have those proper systems of support there, that will also help advocate for you, that will also help keep you in alignment of the birth that you want to have. Right. It's having a really strong team and a strong support system. Yeah. And like I said,
I love that.
Yeah.
Those are great. Was it hard to find positive birth experiences?
No, I found it easy. Honestly, one of my favorite books, like I love her is Ina May, and her book, what is it? The Guide to Childbirth. And it's full of positive birth stories. There's actually a number of different books and even podcasts and stuff out there that you will find a lot of positive birth stories. And I find is what's also important, again, is really being able to mediate your own energy, and that you can't control everything that's going to come to you, because people see you're pregnant and they will come up to you and they'll just tell you sometimes the worst story they've ever heard.
Oh my God. Unsolicited advice. It's the worst. It's the worst. Yes.
It blows my, sometimes I'm like, why do you think someone would want to hear that?
Right.
But also knowing that when you're so grounded in your own vision, what you're capable of, trusting your body, that you can hear those things, right? It doesn't, just because people come to you, that you can kind of put up that sort of that energetic wall of like, okay, thank you for sharing, but it's not really good. I'm not going to let that stick to me. I'm not going to let that sit, right? Because even same thing, and what I work with my clients too is, being able to go into, whether you choose to do a hospital birth, is that if you have that nurse that wants to say the things that, want to plant ideas of pain or discomfort in your head, you're like, all right, she's got a warped sense of what this really is.
Right.
I don't have to listen to it. And also I have my team, my support team here that can be like, okay, you know what, you may need to leave the room, right? That's where I talk about like having that strong support system that also helps manage the energy. And, and that's what I do for some of my clients in person as well. Is sometimes, as a doula supporting them, it's even just mediating the energy in the room.
Right.
And
right.
cutting out,
keeping a good flow.
Yeah. Mediating the flow. Yeah.
Absolutely. Here's to all the good juju rubbing off on you and rubbing on me, that we can have these experiences more often. And I just have absolutely loved listening to you talk about, it's such a different experience to hear you talk about childbirth compared to what we're used to hearing. And don't get me wrong, I've heard some good stories. Absolutely. I've had some friends of mine, they're like, oh my God, I was in labor for like 2 hours. She just popped out. Like, it was no big deal. So I've definitely heard some great stories. I definitely know that it can be that way. I think you're right. I think great advice on figuring out your relationship with fear. I think that's the biggest thing for sure. Support team, obviously, like I've definitely got that. I've got some amazing homeopaths and doctors that are not really Western, but they're certified doctors, things like that. Some incredible people around me that I know that if something happened, they could actually save my life. So all good things. Yeah. But yes, my relationship with fear, and also just the positive birth experiences, just feeding your brain of more and more of those, and choosing to shut out the people who are not on this positive experience train, whatever their unsolicited advice is, cut them off and say, keep that to yourself. I don't need that in my head. Thank you so much. Thank you, but no, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, but no, thank you. Yeah. It's all about, calibrating your energy and holding that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is learn, as much as you can about the physiological process, right? Understanding what your body is doing, and depending, if you do go the route with a doula or anything like that, they can provide you that information too. Cause like I said, knowledge is power. So it's not only just
yes,
this,
I say that all the time.
The spiritual mindset piece. It's also, the evidence and the proof in our bodies of what they actually do and what it does undisturbed. Right. And just knowing options and different things that you can have and tools that you can have, to help your body through the birthing process if it needs it, right? Sometimes it doesn't need any interference. So
sure. Yeah, no, absolutely be open to that. And that, you may not know how this experience is going to go, but like you said, there's certain things we don't have control over, but again, the visualization of how you want it to go. That was the first thing you said as well. Just visualizing how you want the experience to go. And I do believe that, when we have certain things in our world, just, like you said, practicing that, when we have work events, big conferences, my husband's wisdom teeth surgery, all these different things, I definitely the night before visualize how that's going to go. And I visualize it going well, so it's all good things. So I completely agree with everything that you're saying. If my audience has questions, where can they reach you?
You can reach me actually on Instagram at the.new.earth.matriarch.
Perfect. Awesome. And we'll have all of Laura's links in the show notes, so you can easily click on those and find her and discuss more. If this is something that if you're pregnant, if you're wanting to be pregnant, if this is an experience you're wanting to gravitate towards, I think, why would you not want to? I know that, again, the fear of oh, well, mine can't be that way. We didn't really discuss you said the high risk pregnancies, right? Because you were not high risk pregnancy from day one. So some people are, maybe they are not, in a weight category that allows them to be a low risk pregnancy. Maybe they have, autoimmune disorders. Their mothers had terrible pregnancies, whatever. So it could be genetic. What can they still have this experience?
I think you can have a positive experience no matter what. Again, is just educating yourself on the options that you have, because sometimes the medical care staff won't always provide all your options for you. So definitely, like,
most of the time they won't, I think.
most of the time they won't. So
they
that's
sway
why,
you towards something that they think is the better option and the one that they want to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. They'll likely prevent or provide you with a very narrow list of options, right? So if you are high risk and this happens, like, this is your opportunity to do the due diligence, look into what your options are, and that you can still create, a nice birth experience, even if you have to go in for a C-section. This is like your opportunity to advocate for yourself, that, like, even if I'm having a C-section, I still want, low lights. I want to be able to play music. I want to do this. And, maybe not all hospitals will, allow that, but it doesn't hurt in asking, right? Like, it's by those that want to really own their experience, by speaking up and start asking for these things, this is what will start to shift the culture. If no one asks for this stuff, then why would they change, right? But if you really step into that place of leadership in your pregnancy, in that journey, that this is like what gets to shift that culture, right? At the end of the day, that medical care team, the staff, they're there to serve you, and you are the one in control, right? Although there's been a lot of we're taught otherwise, right? We're taught otherwise, that our birth needs to be managed.
Right. So that's what we're trying to shift the paradigm here, is that at the end of the day, they work for you, and it's your experience that they're trying to facilitate, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And you're right. The answer will always be no if you don't ask. I say that all the time and everything else. So why would you not at least?
You can still like, you can still ask for delayed cord clamping. You can still ask to have your baby on your chest right away. Like, these are things you can still ask for. No matter what kind of pregnancy you're having, for the most part, right?
Absolutely. I cannot thank you enough for this conversation, just for your energy, for sharing space in this topic, and for your knowledge, and also just for what you're doing for so many women, and helping them to understand that this experience does not need to be traumatic. It does, it's not. The more painful, the more gold stars you get at the end of the day, and you've done it, you've got a medal of honor. It's not about that. It should be a pleasurable experience. And I strongly believe that as well, because I see that in other areas of my life, when people say, oh, this is how it always goes, and it's like, well, that's not how it goes for us. The big thing right now is traveling. Oh my gosh, my flights are always delayed. Well, ours aren't. And we're all living in the same pilot shortage, issue. And it's just, we have a different energy when we travel. So I very strongly believe that can be crossed over. I think for me, it's been such a fear for so long. I built it up to be this thing. And then a lot of it was like, well, I'm not going to have kids anyway, so I don't really have to worry about it. And so now that has shifted, it's shifting the fear of that to, a more positive.
Well, I think, again, that's where it's time to expand it beyond just, healthy mom, healthy baby, right? That seems to be the standard. And sometimes that gets us into more interventions by just focusing on that, and saying, like, can also have like a thriving, empowering mother and baby, right? These are all things, we can go beyond just that minimum, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we just need to do better. Like, let's evolve, let's grow. How can we make these experiences better, easier, more common, to have these more positive experiences, instead of, what has been taught to us. So thank you for sharing. Again, if you guys want more information on Laura, her experience, to work with her, all of her information is in the show notes. And we may have to do a part 2 of this when when it starts to become a real thing in my life.
I have so much more I could say.
Oh no, totally. And I can see that. And I just wanted to kind of like graze the idea real quick of not be so overwhelmed with information, because switching a paradigm already is so very difficult for people to even say, like, this can be a pleasurable experience, not a painful one, because even the moms and the sisters in your life are like, please, I had 3 children. I know exactly how painful this is,
Yeah.
so like that already, just saying a phrase like that, people are like, and next podcast, because it's not something they want to believe to be a reality. And so just by you sharing your experience and the way that you were feeling and really breaking that down, I think is so crucial. And then, it can get deeper for the people who are ready to jump on that ship.
Yeah, love it.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I'm Christine, and if this episode resonated with you or spoke to you in any way, please feel free to share. I absolutely love hearing from you guys and your thoughts about the topics based on your experiences. And also, if there's anything you want me to talk about, just screenshot this episode and share it on social media with your comments. Your feedback really helps me to curate episodes that best serve you. If you have time, I would greatly appreciate if you could leave a review wherever you're listening to this episode, whether on Apple or Spotify or any other platform. I'm wishing you a blessed week ahead, and remember, perfection doesn't exist. Take messy action. Healthy habits keep us balanced, and you are enough.